determines the shape and look of what we produce. And anybody who reads Tehelka, you have to pick up 3 issues and you will know precisely what is it that we are trying to do and what is the battle we are trying to wage. I'm not saying we are always successful, but I'm saying it's still the battle we want to do. I'd rather fail waging the battle that I want to wage than doing a kind of journalism that doesn't interest me at all. It's not again to legitimize other journalism, it just doesn't interest me, I'm sorry.
That is a great loss for a particular kind of journalism. If you want to read the best profile ever of Amitabh Bachchan, I think you should read Tarun's piece in Outlook. When was that? A few years ago. So Tarun, you've seen power and powerful people from very close. Do men and women react the same way when they have power?
You know, as a thumb rule, I'd just say that women always react better to everything. I mean men. You know, I live with 3 women, and I can tell you, men have no future. You know, I mean, men will be extinct in 200 years. Yeah.
In fact, Tarun said the same thing, I think about 8-9 years ago. I think your daughter was
14 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, a long time back. He came in and he said, boss, I just listened to my daughter speak and men have no future. You know, they're smart.
No, I mean, I can tell you that even in Tehelka, I just want to say that, you know, I mean, the key leadership of Tehelka is women. Some of the most outstanding, brilliant young reporters in Tehelka are women. Even as I speak, there's a 25-year-old girl in Midnapur filing fantastic report after report on the civil war going on in West Bengal. I mean, she's a 25-year-old girl from Marwari family whose parents refused to let her come into journalism. She fought her parents to come in, and she's doing the most astonishing work, the most mature, astonishing, dangerous work. All these young women reporters, they end up in Dantewada in the forests of, tracking Maoist stories. I mean, the amount of work they've done, they've won close to, just the women reporters in Tehelka in the last 5 years have won close to 20 journalism awards, and so I'm pretty clear that the future is female, it's feminine.
Is there any reason for the condition of men in India today? There must be a
bad mothering, I think, but it goes back to women actually. I suppose they'll have to fix it. Yeah, you know, I have to say, but Punjabi men are worse than other men. Yeah, you know. I mean, you live in Delhi now, so you know that.
Actually, we should talk about Delhi. There are several streams of power in Delhi. Media is headquartered in Delhi. Publishing is headquartered in Delhi. Politics, obviously, headquartered in Delhi. National politics, that is. So that does something to the city, isn't it? What is Delhi? What is this beast? Why are Delhi people like that?
You know, I think any power city is fundamentally deranged, and Delhi has been a city of power for 2 millennia. You know, it's probably the longest lived power city in the world in that sense. Yeah. The derangements are inevitable. Power is a very giddy thing. I mean, apart from being sort of the ultimate aphrodisiac according to Kissinger, it's a very deranging thing. It's, you know, Narasimha Rao was retiring and going back. He came back to Prime Minister. He was fine for 6 years. You know, I mean, Vajpayee was fine, and the moment he ceased to be Prime Minister, he fell ill and went away. Power is astonishing in the way it picks up people. I mean, and you see that. Look at India. I mean, all our politicians are 80 years old and they're chugging along pretty fine. You know, I mean, Advani is 84, Manmohan Singh is 80. I mean, just look at it. It's power. It's power. It's kind of, it just keeps you going. And Delhi is deranged because it's a city of deal making. It's a city of hustling. It's a city of, you know, and combine that with the natural sort of aggression of the North Indian, it makes for a very, very volatile mix. Yeah.
I get the feeling that you also enjoy being in Delhi, being in the thick of things.
I don't. No, the truth is I would leave Delhi tomorrow. If I cease to be a journalist, I would leave it tomorrow. I abhor the city. I dislike the city from the bottom of my soul. I don't like. I write about it because that's my vocation. But I have absolutely no love of the city. I love a lot of people in Delhi. I have very close friends who basically constitute my universe, a small group of friends. But I have absolutely no love of the city, and I keep my engagements with the city to the very minimal.
Where would you go?
Where would I go? I would actually probably, go to Goa and lie down on a beach or something. You know? No, you're right. I mean, it's not that I'm going away. As I said, my work is there. So till I'm working, there is no going away from Delhi. And no matter how much we diss Delhi, it is really the heart of the country. It's where the decisions are taken. I'll tell you a simple example. The day Binayak Sen was denied his bail and the news broke on television, I told Geetan, my wife, I just told her, I said, that's why politics matters. That's why people in this country keep forgetting that politics is not important, because a different kind of politics would have ensured that Binayak Sen was never sent to jail and was certainly given bail. I know this because I know how all these things are compromised and carried out. And Binayak Sen is another case that Tehelka picked up way before anybody would speak about Binayak Sen. I remember there was a protest rally for Binayak Sen in 2007 in the Supreme Court in Delhi, in the Supreme Court Hall. And they'd invited 6-7 of us to speak there. And I think Aruna Roy, who's here, was also speaking, and I was speaking. And A.B. Bardhan of the CPI was speaking before me. And when A.B. Bardhan spoke, he said the reason that they brought the Binayak Sen rally to Delhi, to the Supreme Court Hall, was because they were not getting traction with the media back in Chhattisgarh and Raipur. And I remember I spoke after Bardhan, and I called out the names of every single major publication and television company, news television company that exists in Delhi. I started with Times of India, NDTV, Hindustan Times, CNN. I went through everybody, and each time asking if there's a reporter from any of these organizations, please stand up. It was a packed hall. There was only one junior reporter from Indian Express. There was not a single media company in that hall when this protest rally for Binayak Sen was taking place. And I remember turning to A.B. Bardhan and saying, I just want to tell you, it doesn't help. It doesn't help because your cause has no sex appeal. The media in this country, it basically wants sexy stories, and you don't qualify. It took 1.5 years of Tehelka's campaigning. We put him on the cover and we said, no country for good men. And there's that iconic picture which our photographer Shailendra Singh took of him when he was being driven away in the bus. It took another 1.5 years of Tehelka campaigning for Binayak before Binayak became a sexy story. And the rest of the media then began to do him. So, I mean, there are these obvious problems, but what I'm saying is Delhi also has the capacity, if it works well, if it moves towards the right thing, then it has the capacity for an impact that is disproportionate in its good, just as it can be disproportionate in its kind of maliciousness.
One last question from me before we move to the audience. I would like to return to The Assassins. It is also a very honest book, apart from its political commentary. It is also a very male book, actually. It is a very honest male book. Tarun was mentioning the sheer influence and power of women in the media. What people usually do not talk about is the power and influence of women in publishing, actually. So Tarun, men writing like men, the way they want to write, is sometimes offensive to the larger constituency of Indian publishing. I've read some reviews and views of your own book, which accused you of being somewhat offensive in parts, etc. How do you look at the situation now? Were you conscious of the fact when you were writing your book, now, am I going to offend some people? Should I tone down a bit?
No, I'd be terribly upset if I stopped offending people. Yeah? It's my, I mean, it's my stock in trade. I mean, whether as a journalist or a writer, I'm very clear what my vocation is. My vocation is to be subversive. I mean, whether both in my journalism, if I were to sum up the heart of my vocation for myself, whether as a novelist or as a journalist, it's to be subversive. I mean, it's to upset the status quo. It's to ask the uncomfortable question. It's actually to seed great discomfiture. I'm not here to comfort anyone, both as a writer, as a journalist. You want to be comforted, you go and watch television. You want to be comforted, you go and watch cinema. You want to be comforted, you go and read the kind of sweet broadsheets that you want to read. My job, both as a writer and as a journalist, is to seed discomfiture. I'm pretty clear about that. I don't want you to go home and sleep well after you read my work. I want you to stay awake and be really unhappy. I mean, that's my job. I mean, I don't believe the business of writing as far as I'm concerned. And And the business of writing may be different things for different people, and it's all legitimate. All writing is legitimate, let me say that to begin with. But for me, the business of writing is not about amusement and entertainment. I mean, it's particularly not my literary writing. If it is something, I would say it's a kind of exploration, it's a hunt for illumination. It's making a reckoning with yourself of difficult things. That's the novel writing, that's the fiction writing. The journalism is very clear. The journalism is outside of myself. The journalism is a responsibility. I see it as that. The journalism is a burden. The journalism is something I have to discharge. The journalism is something I'm chained to. And it is certainly not about providing comfort. So whether as a writer or a novelist, very different vocations within myself, but both vocations are definitely there to seed, as I said, discontent among my readers, whether they are my readers of my journalism or readers of my novels.
Promise, I have one last question. It's just an incurable journalistic instinct. Why didn't you carry the radio tapes?
No, I never got the tapes. I never got the audio tapes. In fact, the curious thing about the radio tapes is the radio tapes were first sent out to a lot of people. The transcripts were sent out to a lot of people in April. In fact, it was not just Outlook or Open. They went to everybody. I mean, these were not acquired. These were actually delivered at everybody's doorstep. And they came to our doorstep also. And when they came to our doorstep, I remember I told my correspondent, I said, I want to hear the tapes. I said two things. I said, one, I want to hear the tapes. I'm not running them without hearing the audio. And second is, I'm not running anything that's not in public interest. That's been standard of Tehelka. We are not interested in anyone's private lives. No investigation, no expose, nothing Tehelka has done ever intrudes anyone's private lives. I believe completely that every adult in any open society has a total right to their private lives. You know, I mean, what you do with your private life has nothing to do with anybody else. And that's a covenant that an adult liberal society ties everybody into. So these were the two contentions I made. As it turned out, the man who was peddling those tapes then came to visit me himself. And he's a friend of mine. And I said exactly the same things to him. I said, you let me listen to the tapes, or you let my reporter listen to the tapes, and the second thing being, we will only carry all the stuff that's in public interest. He said, I can't give you the tapes because they're not with me, but I've heard them. And you got to trust me. I said, no, I'm not going to carry it. You got to let me listen to them. And that's what happened. Then the next we heard was that the tapes had appeared in Outlook and in Open. So, I mean, obviously, I don't know whether you heard the audio, but I never heard the audio. Did you hear the audio? Yeah. Okay. So was the contention. We said we want to hear the audio. But even after hearing the audio, I would have passed it as carefully as I can to see all the stuff that was in public interest, and I would have put that out. I know. Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll take questions. Actually, who decides who's? I get to decide. Okay. Okay. I've never done that. I like this. Okay.
Hello, so you just mentioned that to view India's democracy, one has to go to lower courts, and how auditor generals are sectoralized in your case. There was a recent case where Mr. Shanti Bhushan, an ex-minister, he submitted a sealed envelope saying that half of the Supreme Court justices was not open.
Unfortunately, that story is also Tehelka's story. I'm in court on contempt on that. Both Prashant Bhushan and I are in court on contempt on that. I was in the Supreme Court just last week for that. It's nothing. It's basically an interview that Prashant Bhushan gave to Shoma Chaudhary, a managing editor, in which he had made a contention that half of the last 16 Supreme Court judges, chief justices, had been corrupt. And suo motu, the court has issued a contempt notice to Prashant and me. And we are in court. The battle is going on. Let's see what comes of it. Yeah.
So Arundhati Roy has already been held in contempt earlier, many years ago.
Oh, that was a junk case.
Yeah.
That was a junk case.
Any way that this system could improve?
Well, it's a battle. You know, to improve any system, you got to go and engage and do battle. That's the point I was trying to make earlier. You want to change anything, you can't sit back and think somebody will change it for you. You got to go there and engage. And let me just tell you that there are some incredible people, one of whom will probably be here later with you, called Aruna Roy, who have been engaged every day in these difficult battles which are changing India in many, many beneficial ways. So there are great warriors doing battle every day, far greater than any of us will ever be. You know, and one has to basically support and back these people. I mean, as I said, India is a work in progress. I mean, the jury is still out on how we will end out. So there is a big battle on. So we don't see it sometimes because we exist in these gorgeous cocoons, but there is a big battle on.
Okay, thank you. One question each. Okay.
Can I ask you if you feel in any way compromised being here at the Jaipur Literature Festival, given that one of the sponsors is Shell, who are up now on charges for the death of Ken Saro-Wiwa?
No, I'll tell you why I don't. I don't because I understand the world is a complex place. I understand the world is a real place and the world has to be negotiated. You can't wish it away. So you have to negotiate the world in all kinds of complex ways to make these easy kind of, summations that because Shell is here, the whole festival is a disaster and we should all flee. That's the kind of crassness we can do without. It's complex. You have to see things in their entirety. You have to negotiate. Shell won't vanish if we just decide that we shut the festival down. But what will happen is this great festival will die, So, I mean, there has to be a kind of, good reason. Place, which is why I find it obscene when national when national rhetoric begins to spin around on phrases like superpower, India shining, and all this. These are really crappy phrases for a country like ours to be getting trapped into. We have serious problems of our own. We can't feed our children. We can't clothe our children. We can't send our children to school. I don't understand where all this comes from. This country is awash with destitution. So, I mean, so corruption is inevitable in a situation like this because anybody who can make whatever he can at any level is going to go on doing it. I'm not saying don't fight corruption. We have to do that. We do so much anti-corruption journalism ourselves all the time. I think the real battle is inequality. In a structural way, deeper down, it's inequality that's seeding a lot of these distortions.
Yeah.
Smita at the back.
So, I am from the mainstream media, perhaps a minority today here, because the mainstream media is not as much into the Lit Fest. The question that I want to put to you is that why is mainstream media perhaps not here? Why is it that you, in your references, talk about mainstream media not responding to good stories? I'm a young journalist. Every young journalist who works in TV is asked the same, what kind of shit are you guys doing on TV? It'll help me if you could answer this question. Who is to blame for this mainstream media in this rut of a Rakhi Sawan? Is it the mainstream media bosses, or is it the people who don't appreciate a good story? Otherwise, how is it that an Indian Express, an Open, a Tehelka, who do the best possible sort of journalism, are the least bought, least read in terms of numbers, at least TRP's numbers, RAM, TAM, etc., etc.? Or is it the people who are to be blamed because they don't appreciate a good story, they don't buy it? If tomorrow they start buying a good story, even the much laughed off channels will start doing good stories on Rakhi Sawan.
No, I mean, that's what you've said is at the heart of the conundrum. You've spelled it out. I mean, I couldn't spell it out better. You've said it pretty well. It is an issue. I think the problem does lie with the readership also. I mean this is a readership which wouldn't think twice about, having a pizza that costs 300 rupees. But if you tell them to buy a magazine that costs 50 rupees, they wouldn't buy it, I mean, so there is a problem. I mean, it's like books. We have such a poor book buying culture in India. I mean, I have friends who won't think twice about having a 10,000 rupee dinner, but they would complain about a 400 rupee book. So there's a kind of skew there, which is a problematic skew. And really, unless the critical mass gains rapidly in terms of backing and appreciating work that they claim they wish to back and appreciate, things will not change, And partly the problem maybe of leadership in news platforms. I mean, there is this very easy assumption that the reader only wants dumb stuff, the reader only wants fluff. I think that assumption should be constantly challenged. I think some of us try and challenge that assumption, and the fact that we survive and have survived is some kind of validation that that assumption may not be entirely correct, but it is a problem because a good editorial product, I believe, as an editor now for almost 17, 18 years, I believe a good editorial product is something like a great meal. So a master chef or a master editor should have the ability to cobble together a great meal which appeals to the palate of the consumer. He can't spend all his time trying to second guess it. If you ask a consumer, what do you like? You'll never know. If you come and tell me what's the great meal you'd like to have, I won't know. But when I eat a good meal, I know I like it. So in some sense, the master chefs, that's all of us editors, have to be a little more quality conscious, a little more conscious of the larger picture. And here again, I hate going on saying this, but it's largely because of my own Tehelka experience. I keep saying it. It's crucial for all editors and all journalists to understand the framework of things. Very complex. Its framework today is very delicate, very fragile, very complex. And we have to understand what it is that we have to do in this delicate, fragile framework that is expected of us. I think that understanding is still very poor. I'm constantly meeting journalists who have a very shallow understanding of the vocation they pursue. You know, I mean, it's a critical vocation today, and I think I already see a backlash coming. I already see politicians, public, beginning to hit back at journalists, and because we've been holier than thou for a long time without really doing the work to merit that holier than thou attitude. Yeah. So I mean, that's a tough one. Sunita, yeah.
We'll take one last question. That'll be the last question.
This is a very simple, simple request and a very simple question. In your pre-Tehelka days, I personally think you were the finest literary critic that the country had. I just finished reading over the night of December 31st, Manu Joseph's Ceres Men. I think I thought it was brilliant. Why don't you please ask him or ask him a question on his interviewer? This is...
Unfortunately, I haven't read the book, so why don't you ask the question? Since you read the book, why don't you ask the question?
You know what? I mean, having read you in Open Magazine and sort of Googled you and read many of your articles, what brought you to the subject that you wrote on? And marriage. I mean, it has so many other things. You know, there is... I mean, you are speaking about administrators, about marriage, about institutions, etc.
Yeah. See, I have a slightly different view from Tarun on the tone that we choose to tell our stories. I mean, Tarun, to me, Assassins is actually a very funny novel. In fact, a lot of people who listen to Tarun would think that this is going to be a very serious political commentary, but what he has done is something else. Now, I look at, I love the general pointlessness of being Indian and being angry about it. To be angry, I've always felt, is an admission that a situation is unfamiliar to you. It is exasperating to be an Indian, but there is extraordinary humor in accepting that this is the way we are. So Serious Men was an attempt to laugh at all of us with a bit of malice and tell the story from the point of view of a man who is usually not allowed to interpret India in Indian literature. He's a man who lives in a chawl. A chawl is almost a vertical slum in Bombay. And he has a view of modernity which is quite scathing and it's quite funny. And he is a bitter man. I wanted to tell the story of India through a man who is usually not given that chance. Thanks. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you so much, everyone.
Let's give a very